very few of you who may not know. I'm Joe McGrath.
And I'm Cindy Meyer.
And we're the founders of the Rogue Theater. And we want to welcome you to the first event of the 18th season.
And we're so excited. I'm just going to introduce Patrick Baliani, and he's going to introduce our speakers for today. So thank you, Patrick.
It's so good to see everyone here. I can't tell you what it means for me to be able to participate with my students here in contextualizing for you the production of Sweat. Thank you to all of the Rogue for having us. Thank you all for attending. On behalf of the Rogue, I want to extend a special thanks to Paul Runnig and Rhonda Lustman for sponsoring this talk. Thank you. I also we wish to thank Jerry James for the brilliant essay he has provided us. And for all the essays. Jerry provides essays as long as I can remember when we come to these talks, and they're so erudite, expressive, with verve, succinct, and chock full of information. I always read them many times. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
I am so fortunate to have been able to work with these two students, and for me to list the many reasons I am both grateful and thankful for them would take the hour. So I'm going to be very brief. You may already know some of their work because a year ago, when 12th Night was produced, Nick and Gaby, along with classmates, including Maria up here, authored the program notes for that production. And it was a brilliant essay which even the founders of the Calderwood, the sponsors of our course in Wellesley, honored on a national stage at the end of that year. So if you remember that essay, these two were largely responsible for that, along with Medea. Nick is an honors junior, majoring in sociology with minors in anthropology and art. And I can't tell you how creative, thoughtful, excellent a writer, and a superb contributor to classroom discussions. But I think I can get that across by telling you, and he may or may not have realized this over the past 2 years, but whenever I'm in class with Nick and I have nothing else completely to say, I turn to him. And there's a kind of radar I have. It doesn't matter what classroom I'm in. I know where Nick is at, and I turn to him, and I will call on him, whether he has his hand up or not. And he always comes through with something so striking and progressive and leading us to better discussions, but based on, what we've been doing. So, thank you, Nick. Gaby Gubka and I have known each other since her freshman year. She impressed me then. She impressed me all along her undergraduate studies. She has a degree in physiology with minors in English and biochemistry. All through her undergraduate career, she garnered awards and recognitions both for her academics and her extracurricular activities. I have to say that I was honored to be her thesis advisor. I have never, ever worked with a more brilliant thesis writer than Gaby Gubka. And the last thing I'll say is that in May she graduated. We're very proud of her. She was one of 2 students throughout the entire W.A. Franke Honors College to receive the Dean's Award of Excellence. Wow. Thank you, Gaby and Nick. Please welcome.
That was close. Like Professor Baliani said, thank you so much for introducing us and the kind words. I'm Nick. I'd like to extend my gratitude, of course, to you guys for showing up for this, and to Cynthia and Joe and all the rest of the Rogue staff for having us here. This is a great experience. I'd like to begin our talk by discussing our playwright, Lynn Nottage, who is incredible. 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner, first in 2009 for her play Ruined, and again in 2017. She's actually the first woman to receive that award twice, the second playwright of color since the inauguration of the Pulitzer Prize in 1917. Took 100 years, a century for a woman to receive that award twice, for a woman of color to receive that award twice. It's incredible. Did it turn off? Okay, cool. I just got numb to it. That's an amazing, commendable, fantastic achievement, extremely well-deserved for the work that she creates, as you'll see with Sweat. But it's a bit disheartening to think about that. A whole century of that award being in place for that to happen, for a single woman to get that twice, for a second playwright of color to get that twice. But at the same time, it's largely encouraging. I think it's amazing that finally these stories that have been told for forever about the underprivileged, about classism and racism and womanhood, these stories that have been told forever are finally getting the recognition that they deserve, that they need. And I really do hope to see the scope of the Pulitzer Prize board expand even more so we can get more of those voices in the mainstream, in the spotlight. Anyway, tangent over. I want to circle back to some of her past plays, specifically Ruined, her 2009 first Pulitzer Prize awarded play. Also won an Obie, which is an award for off-Broadway plays. Fantastic play. I definitely urge you to check this out if you like Sweat, which you definitely will. I'm going to read a quote here from the Pulitzer Prize board about Ruined. It describes Ruined as a searing drama set in chaotic Congo that compels audiences to face the horror of wartime rape and brutality while still finding affirmation of life and hope amid hopelessness. I want everybody to keep in mind that hope amid hopelessness part. That's something that I feel Nottage includes in all of her plays, especially in Sweat. There's moments when the sort of the vibe of the play is very down and sad and hopeless, but she wants you to recognize that and come out of that and find hope in that moment. Hope amid hopelessness. Although Ruined and Sweat don't necessarily tackle the same topics, Ruined talks about war and gender and race in the Congo during a civil war, and Sweat discusses class and race and gender as well. There's a lot of overlap, but they are very tonally similar. They deal with very real topics, very real, candid moments that specifically affect the underprivileged, but definitely we can all relate to moments of this as well. It's really important to me that Nottage includes these really real themes, these real issues in society in such a candid way, in such a real way, and you'll notice that in the scene that you guys get to see later, which I'm very excited for, that it seems very real. This play is grounded in reality. It's not metaphorical, it's not fantasy, it is very real. And sometimes that feels a bit confrontational, and that's the point. I really admire that about her work, and it just shows her extended curiosity in this world that is so gritty and so real. She's just very curious, and it's amazing that she's been able to put this on stage. Super inquisitive, like I said. She really makes it her goal to give voices to the invisible, provide a narrative to people who are lacking an identity, so it seems. The sort of catalyst, the moment that really brought Sweat into being, or into an idea, I guess, was an email that Lynn Nottage received from one of her friends who was struggling. She had no idea that this friend of hers that she'd known for years and years was going through such hardship economically and socially. And it really opened her eyes to recognize that she knows so little about the world, about the struggles that go around in the United States, much less the entire world. But that moment really emphasized this part of her that was curious, that was inquisitive, and she decided that she needs to not only understand this more, but understand it enough to put it forward and make other people understand it. And I think that really manifests in Sweat. It is her goal through this play to make sure everybody understands their neighbor and people that they haven't talked to, that there is a line that ties everybody together. But it was really, that email about economic hardship specifically was what brought this into her mind. She really wanted to know why poverty in this time, in 2011 she received the email. She wanted to understand why poverty was really reshaping that American narrative, why there was such a global and international, national struggle. Sorry, I keep losing my place because I'm rambling, ignore me. This sort of curiosity that she had brought her over to Reading, Pennsylvania in 2011. Has anybody been there? Nice, you get to see your hometown on the stage, awesome. Or maybe not hometown, if you've been there, I don't know, sorry. 2011, she went to Reading, planned to be about 2.5-week investigation. She brought this question with her, let me see exactly what she said. How would you define your city? She asked everybody in the town, workers, the homeless people. She talked to congressmen, legislatures, corrections officers. How would you define your city? And the answers that she received, she noticed a trend, that it was very much Reading was. Reading was this city. Reading was all of these things, but never Reading is. And I think that's so powerful that she was able to recognize that and try to bring a narrative to a city that she believed had no identity in the present. It was a city in the past, but it was still there, and its residents still lived, and they still had struggles and had lives that no longer had a story to go along with them that tied them all together. It was very dividing. So she wanted to bring this to light and give them a present narrative because none of the residents could find it themselves. Despite her own sort of hesitancy to open up to the people in Reading, just because she was an outsider and from New York, from Brooklyn, just showed up as a playwright and said, hey, I want to write a play about you guys, tell me about yourselves. I don't know what I would say to that, but she was a little hesitant to go up and ask people that, I'm sure. They were also quite hesitant to spill their life story to this random lady. But she realized that there was so much common ground that she could find with these people. Even as a playwright from Brooklyn, these workers in Reading were so real to her, and there was such a commonality that she can find about struggle. As an artist herself, she's very familiar with struggle. I mean, as most artists, you sort of live in economic struggle. And she understood that, and she was able to put herself in the shoes of these residents who were struggling and who were fighting, and really bring that town together with a narrative. 2.5 weeks became 2.5 years that she stayed in Reading, doing her research, investigating, really learning about the lives of these people as much as she could. And she found that the connections that she could make made her writing experience so much more profound. And part of that, I believe, is why, as an audience member, as a reader of this play, it is so powerful. Because, like Nottage was able to really find herself in these characters, you too can really understand, see these people in your lives, see them in the people around you. I can see them for sure. Oracle, Arizona, lots of people from Oracle probably have been to Oracle. You know, it was a lot more. It's like Reading in a sense. It was an old mining town, not so much anymore. A lot of my family lives in Oracle, so I've seen sort of firsthand how this loss of jobs and just economic hardship can turn people against each other and make things so much more difficult and so much more miserable to live. This small shift can bring about so many more issues, and then people stop seeing each other as people. Again, I've seen this in my own family members, how things start to fall apart, and everybody's stressed out at that point. There's just no life without stress in times of economic hardship or in times of struggle in general. As a broke college student with a job who can't sometimes pay bills without asking my mother for help, I understand stress also, maybe not to the extent of any of you or of any of the characters in this play or the people in Reading in 2000, 2008, but I understand stress, I get it, and that is what Lynn Nottage recognizes. She understands that everybody, that me and Gaby and all of you and all the characters that she writes know stress and are stressed and are facing these hard pressures that just make life seem unlivable and make it seem like you can't relate to anybody else. But she really stresses the importance of finding a common ground, and that stress does not have to be a dividing force, but can instead be uniting and unifying. And I think that's pretty amazing. So I'll pass it on to Gaby real fast here, just to talk about how this stress is largely tied to the economic state. So thank you.
So Sweat is a great play. It takes place in a time where globally and domestically, tensions are really high, as they always seem to be, right? Specifically, it takes place in 2000 and 2008. 2000 is the past in this play, and 2008 is the present tense, or the present day. So the reason Lynn Nottage chose 2000, as much as we can assume, is because during this time, of course, there's a lot going on, but specifically the North American Free Trade Agreement is in full swing. That's NAFTA, if anyone remembers that, I don't know. NAFTA during this time it took away the tariffs between America and Canada and Mexico. So America was taking in a lot of imports from Canada and Mexico. A lot of products were coming in, but what that did was decrease our need for products being made domestically. So that led to a lot of job losses, a lot of companies closing down, stuff like that, but that also caused a lot of companies to seek out cheaper labor. So what they ended up doing, because Mexico had a very poor job market at the time, is we were looking for labor in Mexico and paying them very poorly, and so a lot of people were coming over to take those jobs because the companies were just really trying to increase their profit. A little selfish, don't you think? A little selfish, but anyways, during this time too, in the 1990s, there was a wave of the opioid crisis. And in 2000, that was for sure still a problem, and it's actually interesting because the second wave was considered to be in 2010, which was just a year after the 2007 recession. So there's a lot of drug and alcohol problems going on that everyone's aware of during this time. Sorry. And then in our present day, which is 2008, this is the middle of the recession, right? So we have, in 2007, the recession started, and this is the most recent economic decline to this extent since the Great Depression. And so when I was doing research for today, for preparing for my notes, I saw online that it is actually called nowadays the Great Recession. Has anyone heard it called the Great Recession? Anyone? Yeah, of course. Oh, great, okay. Well, when I told my mom, she was like, what? It's just a recession. And you know, yeah, there she is in the audience. But I cannot say that I lived the recession as others did. I was 8 years old. I remember a little bit of the impact it had on my parents. I remember times were tough, and I remember hearing my friends' parents were getting laid off. There's just a lot of problems. But you know, when I heard that it was being called the Great Recession, it made me think that this sounds a lot like the Great Depression, don't you think? And it was the most severe economic recession, economic decline since the Great Depression, and it kind of all led me to think about how even though the Great Depression was not talking about the Great Mental Depression, it was kind of also a symptom of the time. You know, I can imagine that the Great Depression, you know, left a lot of people hopeless and really struggling in many different ways, and in that same way, the Great Recession did as well. So in doing my research, I ended up also looking into it. I was typing on Google, and I saw there are actually, quite a few studies that say that people who suffered job, financial, house losses during the recession, that they are way more likely to suffer from anxiety, depression, drug and alcohol dependence, all these different things because of these financial stresses. So All this is going on in the play, and when you are shown Sweat next week, if you go to see it, you're dropped into this world that is very close to reality. It's things that you've probably experienced or you've seen other people experience. And so, yeah. I also had another anecdote like Nick. So although I was 8 during the recession, and I'm not an expert on much, I did recently leave a job where I was a medical scribe at a psychiatric treatment center. And this was a really great job, but what it really taught me, what I really saw is there were just so many people struggling. The people that we would get in the office suffered from depression, anxiety, opioid addiction, alcohol addiction, things like that. And the very first encounter we had with them, their first visit, the doctor would always ask, okay, tell me what's going on, but then second, do you have any financial stresses? Do you have a job? How is your job? Did you lose your job? And how's your home life? And more times than not, we saw that people struggling with depression, anxiety, alcohol, drug addictions, there was a cause, there was a factor in there, and it was usually due to finances that kind of catalyzed these problems. And as you're probably saying, well, yeah, obviously. But it's true. But what really stood out to me is that within those first couple visits, just talking about these problems, the patients would see a little bit of relief. They would say, I feel so much better, I feel a weight lifted off of my chest. And of course, that did not cure them completely from their issues, but I did see that it helped. And it really led me to believe that talking about finances and financial problems, job losses, things like that, it's pretty much taboo in our culture, as far as I've seen. We don't want to talk with our friends over lunch. Hey, I just had to take out another loan for the house, or had to file for bankruptcy at the bar. Not something you want to say usually. And so our characters in Sweat deal with these same issues, whether it's due to shame. Perhaps a lot of Americans feel like they don't fit into this mold of the perfect working class American that they've kind of been shown. So there's a lot of different problems and factors that cause them to not discuss their issues. But these characters we see do struggle with depression, anxiety. We have one character named Jesse who is introduced as an alcoholic, and some other characters who do have drug dependencies. So our characters in Sweat are Americans. They're the working class. They're the people in rehab centers. They're the people at the grocery store. It's a very real play. Yeah. And so actually, you all have the great pleasure today of seeing a piece of the play. So we are going to show you in just a few minutes Act 1, Scene 6, which is, I think, my favorite scene for sure. It's just a part of it, and it's going to be really great, but I wanted to give a little bit of context so you're not just kind of thrown into it. So Act 1, Scene 6 takes place at this bar, and it is Jesse's birthday. Tensions are a little high at the time. I'm not going to really spoil anything because you will see it in a few minutes. But yeah, while you watch though, I did have a couple questions I hope you just keep in the back of your mind. And those are these. When the going gets tough and someone's livelihood is threatened, how does the average American act? Who do they direct their anger towards? Do they fall under the weight of the pressure? And does their hope make it out to the other side? And with that being said, I also wanted to read, that was very smooth, I wanted to read the stage directions for that scene, just to give you an idea of what's happening on that day, during that time in this play, in the real world. Great. May 5th, 2000, outside it's 84 degrees Fahrenheit. In the news, the U.S. unemployment rate tumbles to a 30-year low, 3.9%. The city of Reading fires a dozen employees, fearing a deficit of $10 million. Allen Iverson and the Philadelphia 76ers prepare for Game 1 of the Eastern Conference semifinals.
Oh, did you actually put some alcohol in it this time?
Against my better judgment, I did.
Oh, so funny.
You've been warming that seat for a long time. Are the ladies coming?
Well, that's what they said, but who knows at this point.
What time did they say they were going to meet you?
Officially, over an hour ago.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Is there something going on I should know about?
Oh, I don't know. Cynthia, the promotion, whatever. Look, Tracy likes to pretend that it ain't a big deal, but I can tell she don't like taking orders from Cynthia. And look, don't spread this, but things haven't been so good between them.
That's the way people are in this town. Bitch and moan about something better, but the minute somebody does well, forget it.
Yeah, tell me about it. Tracy has been going around town whispering the only reason Cynthia got the job is because she's black. 2 months ago, she couldn't give
Come on, that's
suddenly-
bull. Cynthia earned that promotion.
Well, sure. But I know for a fact it pissed off a lot of people.
Give me a break. People don't like change. Yeah, I wouldn't lose any sleep over it.
Yeah, you're right. Them all. I am so sick of being in the middle. Let's cut the cake.
You sure?
Yeah.
Hey, Oscar. Yeah. Can you give me that knife? So, do you have any special birthday wishes?
Oh, hell yeah. But you know what would be nice? A kiss. I just want to be kissed today.
Happy birthday, sweetheart. Mwah! Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry, babe.
Oh, here comes the
What?
boss.
I just got out of the meeting.
Oh, is everything okay?
Don't worry about it. Today is your day. Here. Happy birthday. Do you believe in life after love? I can feel something inside me say, I really don't think you're strong enough now.
Okay. I almost forgive you.
I would not miss this, but I could not get out of there. I was trapped in a room of supervisors, all of them with passionate ideas about how the floor could run more smoothly. Yet none of these donkeys have ever even operated a machine.
Yeah, no.
I mean, there's one idiot who swears that the plant can be run by 5.5 people.
Where's he gonna find half a person?
Whiskey?
Double, babe.
Jeez, how's the new job?
Exhausting.
Look, as long as we have air conditioning by this summer, I am happy.
It is number 16 on my very long list. Don't hold your breath, babe.
Look at you, you got a list.
Ooh, and a desk and a computer.
What?
I've seen it. She ain't lying.
I mean, all those years on the floor, that must taste sweet.
Oh, sweet? Don't even begin to describe it, babe. First day, I park, get out, and immediately head for the floor. It's a reflex. I just do it. Get to the door, same as usual. I smell the oil and the metal dust, hear the machinery churning, and feel the energy of the room. I go to my station, say, hey, Lance, Becky, and get ready. I mean, my body knows it's there to pack dudes. It's what I do.
That's what you do.
I fire up the machine. Everybody's just looking at me. Tracy says, what the are you doing here? Then I remember, I can go sit down.
Oh, yes, you can.
I'm not wearing my car hard. I'm not going to be on my feet for 10 hours. I loosen my support belt. I don't have to worry about my fingers cramping or the blood blisters on my heel. I can stop sweating because God, the office has air conditioning. These motherfuckers got air conditioning.
Yeah, of course they do.
24 years, and I don't remember talking to anyone in the office except to do paperwork. And some of these folks have been there as long as us, but they are as unfamiliar as strangers sitting next to you on a bus.
Yeah, that's for sure.
It's like looking at a map and realizing that you're just a few miles away from the ocean, but you didn't realize it because it was on the other side of them damn mountains.
I am so proud of you. You got off the floor.
We missed the party.
Oh, we just cut the cake.
Happy birthday to
Oh,
you.
thank you.
Hey,
Happy birthday.
where y'all coming from?
Ooh, we just took a spin on Jason's new bike.
No!
Yes.
Congratulations!
I hope you were wearing a helmet.
Hey, what you got on tap?
You got an ass?
Keep hope alive, that's all I'm saying.
Dude, where's Mom?
I don't know, you tell me.
Don't worry, she'll be here. You know her.
Yeah.
You look all important.
I gotta dress the part.
Hey, I bet you're proud of your mom.
She's aight.
Hey, Sid, you remember the first day we met?
Mm-hmm.
You were sporting an afro,
What?
and platforms.
Yes.
And I thought there was no way you were going to make it a day on the line.
And you look like Joni Mitchell with a headband and your hair down to your butt.
Hey, guess how old I was when I started, Stan?
19.
18. 18, can you believe it? The summer I started, I was just a couple years younger than you guys.
Bet you were hot.
You know, I was.
Oh, she was.
That was the summer. A lot of fun. I wasn't thinking about anything.
Yeah.
I figured I would be at Oldstead's for 6 to 8 months max.
Come on.
Can you believe it? Oh, I was collecting green stamps the entire year. Remember green stamps? Yeah. Oh God, I was gonna trade them in for a backpack, a tent. I had like 10,000 of them.
Wow.
Oh, I was gonna hitch my way across the country with my boyfriend, Felix.
I remember Felix. Ooh, he was a musician, right?
He had a harmonica. And we planned to wind up in Alaska, where my dad had worked in a cannery in Kodiak.
I remember your dad, Phil Lombardi. He looked like,
James Gardner.
That's it.
Yeah. He split for Alaska when I was 13. A lot of folks went up there that summer, remember?
Sure.
God, me and Felix, that was so long ago. We were gonna do Alaska, you know? Camp, live clean, save up enough money to get to India. Yeah. Live in an ashram for a while, and then bum along the hippie trail. Istanbul, Tehran, Kandahar, Kabul, Peshawar, Lahore, Kathmandu. These places. I still remember them all. Oh, I used to say them every night, like a mantra, a prayer, you know. Istanbul, Tehran, Kandahar, Kabul, Peshawar. I had the whole thing mapped out. Yeah, we had this map that Felix had ripped out of an atlas in the library. The World Book. Oh, yeah. God, that was the plan.
So, why didn't you go?
Oh, started working. Met Dan.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I guess I just got caught up in the riptide. Couldn't get back to shore. That's how it is. So,
You ever sorry?
yeah, I guess. I mean, look, I wish I had gotten to see the world, you know? Left Berks County, if even for a year. That's what I regret, you know? Not the work. I regret the fact that for a little while it seemed like there was possibility. Oh, I'll think about that Jessie on the other side of the world and what she might have seen. I'm so sorry.
You know, I got to see a little bit of the world after Nam. It follows you everywhere. Some ways you're better off not knowing.
Yeah. You don't know what you don't know until you know, right? Then it's too late. Istanbul, Tehran, Kandahar, Kabul, Peshawar, Lahore,
Kathmandu.
Wow. That was so amazing. Thank you, everyone, for that. But as you may have seen from that scene, many of the characters in this play are working at the same factory, which is Olsted's, and they are all in the working class. They all have a bunch of things in common. As you saw, a lot, they want to travel the world. They want to get out of, the factory. They want, a better life, right? But it's interesting because a lot of the people that work at the factory have different ways of thinking about their jobs. So a lot of the workers want to get out. A lot of them want a promotion. They want to get paid more, or they want a better job. They want to not be sweating. As Cynthia said, they want to not have blisters on their feet and all of that. But there's also a group of individuals that work at the factory that don't necessarily have the ambition to leave. A lot of them justify it as, well, if I leave, what if I can't get back? What if I can't get this job back, and they hire someone else, someone younger? And it's not promised that they'll get a good job anywhere else, because this is what the economy is at the time. And a lot of the people that don't want to leave also have a sense of loyalty, I've worked here for so many years, all these years, and a lot of the characters you'll meet, they have, you know, a father or a grandfather who also worked at the factory. It's in the family, it's in their blood. And, you know, this is their way of living, and they make enough to pay rent, and they go to the bar with their extra money, and that's it. So these are the kinds of people you see in the play. Of course, this is all affected by the economy, but it is interesting because you also might have seen from that scene that with a sense of loyalty and perhaps entitlement to that job comes fear that maybe someone could take that away. And when someone is threatened with poverty in that way, it's pretty possible for blame and prejudice and scapegoating to also come into that equation. So you'll see characters kind of justify that, you know, perhaps they want to hire workers of color because they're looking to meet a quota. And perhaps so-and-so got the promotion because they're a person of color, and the same thing, there's a quota. And what it really comes down to is this is something that happens in the real world. This is something that we might have seen or heard or said on, you know, ourselves. But it really just comes from this feeling that you're being threatened, and who do I look to? Who do I blame for that? You know, I want to be able to make ends meet. And at this time, workers end up pointing fingers at each other and making enemies out of each other. And that's not good, because who is really to blame here? Who's to say? But it's not your fellow worker. It's not the person who's also trying to make a living, who is, you know, also struggling to pay rent. The problem is for sure higher up. You know, perhaps it lies within the head of the companies who you're working for, who don't see your individual struggle, who don't see that their workers now have, you know, drug and alcohol dependencies and all these problems and can't pay their rent. So this play is really about, you know, who do we blame and should we blame them? You know, the average worker should unite with the other average workers. I lost my place in my notes. I'm gonna find it. But yeah, the working class all have a common goal, which is to survive, to support their families, and to make it. And when you watch the play next week, I have some more questions for you to keep in mind. And those are, who is the real villain of this story? Do you side with the old workers or the newer workers, if any? And does it make sense to draw lines in the sand in this case, you know, considering they all have similar, separate problems and they're all struggling in their individual ways? Should they unite, or, you know, is there hope in making things better? And I'm gonna hand it off to Nick to say a little bit more.
Thank you, Gaby. I want to talk a little bit about aspirations and hopes and dreams. As you can tell by that scene, and you'll find more evidence of this in actually watching the play, Sweat paints a pretty grim picture of aspiration. We see Jessie break down, realizing that her once dreams of traveling the world are out the window. The play is sort of a revolving door of these characters sharing with us their hopes, and then us watching them get stripped away. And though this is happening, it's definitely not the intention to strip us of our hope. Instead, this play is much more of a cautionary tale against infighting and fighting people in who you can relate to. It's a call to wake up from the American dream instead of sitting by and being disillusioned and being content with that. Lynn Nottage wants us to unite towards progress. She doesn't want us to divide one another and break us down. We see that there's a lot more obviously going on in this play than just class issues. Lynn Nottage's Wikipedia, don't trust Wikipedia. That's what all your teachers say. Lynn Nottage, her Wikipedia says, it describes her as a playwright dealing with topics relating to the working class. As I mentioned, ruined earlier, barely has anything to do with the working class. There's so much more to her work than just that one identity fragment. There's every social identifier you can think of, race, class, gender, all of that has to do with, or all of that has a place in Reading, has a place in Sweat. Gaby and I first read this play, and Maria up there, we all read this play first in Professor Baliani's Race, Class, and Gender on the American Stage class, which was phenomenal, by the way. If you have any friends and family in the Honors College, make them take that class. But just from that, it's so clear that there's much more to this play than just class. And keep an eye on that. Watch that. Be critical when you're watching this play. Understand that there's so many facets of identity that can be related to this. Our three main women in the play, Cynthia, Jessie, who we met a couple minutes ago, as well as Tracy, they have so much to find commonality about. Two of them are mothers. They're all women who share their experiences being exploited in the workforce. They're all workers, first of all, but yet they somehow find these boundaries to draw and divide one another rather than finding this common ground. But the whole play isn't that hopeless, again, calling back to the hope amid hopelessness. The final scene, which I will not spoil at all, but the final scene is amazing. Yeah, watch the play. It gives us that little glimmer of hope, that it features some of the younger characters in the play. And it's really telling us, it's Lynn Nottage telling us that it's our job to find this common ground, to not let ourselves be divided, and to carry on towards progress with that common ground. And not just as a youth, but as Americans. It's our job to redirect this narrative, reshape where we're headed. And she's sort of passing this torch on, but also passing somewhat of a burden, but passing her hope as well. So there's a lot of things that she's giving us there. Her intent with Sweat overall was just to make sure that everybody knows that every, she says, fractured individual in every fractured town has that shared narrative, has that common ground to find. It's just our responsibility to bring that to light and to find that. So after closing Sweat on Broadway, she actually brought the play back to Reading and did a showing in Reading, Pennsylvania, which is amazing, first of all. The audience was overwhelmingly thankful. It was the people that she'd interviewed years before, and they got to see themselves and characters that reflect themselves on stage in a narrative that doesn't make fun of them, that doesn't poke at their struggles, but instead just shows their struggles. And that's just, it's so powerful. There's no metaphor, it's just a story. And I'll pass it on to Gaby to share some of her thoughts about finding common ground.
I realize you guys don't have my nice copy of Sweat, and so I would actually like to share the very first thing that you see in this book is the list of characters, and it's very interesting because every character, their race is specifically mentioned, and so when you cast for this, you need to make sure that the actors fit that, right? So our first character is Evan. He's an African American in his 40s. Jason, white American of German descent, 21 and 29 with the time jump. Chris, African American, 21 and 29. Stan, white American of German descent, 50s. Oscar, Colombian American, 22, 30. Tracy, white American of German descent, 45, 53. Cynthia, African American, 45, 53. Jessie, Italian American, 40s. And Brucey, African American, 40s. Oh my goodness. I almost missed the most important part. I do this every time. And all of the characters were born in Berks County, Pennsylvania. So, as you see, of course, there are things that divide these characters, their race, their life experiences, but at the same time, they're all born in the same place. They're all born in America. They're all struggling. They're all working these jobs, and sometimes they're not enough. And the point is that workers and their immediate bosses, workers and the people that, you know, threaten their jobs in ways, they're not so far off on the social pyramid. You know, we're all the working class, they're all the working class. And imagining such a large divide between them really only exacerbates the loneliness, the hopelessness, and the feelings of just like isolation that come from, you know, struggling financially and not being able to talk about it, not being able to relate to your average worker and level with them. And that's something we see in the play. This problem is systemic, as is prejudice, which we see in the play as well, which in this case stems from the workplace. But that is to say, because it's, you know, systemic, there's no simple cure, there's no answer I can give you today. When I was preparing for this, I was really hoping I could scrounge up some incredible solution. You know, what can we take from this? You know, where do we go from here? And I don't have an answer. But I think there is hope in saying, you know, we at the end of the day are just more similar than not to, you know, not get along with or not relate to your average worker, the person next to you, whoever that is. And, you know, if we are not able to unite, then, you know, where do we go from here, right? And so I do have a quote from Lynn Nottage. She said this in regards to the people of Reading, Pennsylvania, the real people she interviewed to inform the play. She said, "What surprised me was my ability to empathize with people who I always thought were on the other side of the divide. When you interview Black and Latino folks, there is a narrative that has existed for the last 50 years of being sort of disaffected from the culture. But I sat in rooms with middle-aged white men and heard them speaking like young Black men in America. They feel disenfranchised, disaffected." So as you see, though these groups of people are disaffected in different ways and to different degrees, for sure, they're not all that different. And it is clear in this play that, you know, a worker is not your enemy, but rather someone to lean on and unite with. And I'm going to pass it back to Nick to close this out.
Lynn Nottage says about Sweat that her real hope, I'm going to read it, so I'm not looking at you, sorry. Her real hope is that after the audience sees the play, that they want to sit down and talk to someone who they have never had a conversation with before, that they will ask really tough questions, not just of themselves, but of the legislators and of the people in power, and that they will understand the power of art and be more willing to engage with storytelling. So let that be your takeaway for Sweat. Thanks everybody so much for being here.